You have been lied to about why you are stuck. You have been told you lack motivation, discipline, willpower, talent. You have been told to wake up earlier, hustle harder, grind longer. Yet when the alarm goes off, when the stress hits, when the pressure spikes, you fold back into the same patterns. So here is the truth Machiavelli would give you, with no sugar on it. You do not lack motivation. You lack a political reason to suffer. Think of your life like a small city-state in the old Italian wars. Your time, your energy, your emotions, your habits, your body, your money, these are your territory. Every day, other forces are trying to govern that territory. Corporations want your attention. Algorithms want your addiction. Weak social norms want your compliance. Comfort wants your loyalty. If you do not rule this territory, someone else will. Machiavelli wrote for princes who understood one brutal fact. There is no such thing as unclaimed power. If you are not consciously in power, you are being ruled. That is why your mental toughness is weak. Not because you are broken, not because you are lazy, but because you have never framed your suffering as political. You have been taught to see pain as a personal inconvenience, not a strategic weapon. You go to the gym when you feel like it. You push your business when inspiration hits. You have never sat down and said, "This suffering is taxation I impose on myself to fund my power." And until you do, discipline will always feel optional. Machiavelli once wrote, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command." Everyone quotes that about leading others. The deeper application is this: if you want your body and mind to obey you, you must learn to command them, like a prince commands a city. Orders are not requests. Orders do not depend on mood. Orders are anchored in necessity. When you see your life as a political project of building sovereignty, your training stops being a lifestyle experiment and becomes statecraft. First, you need to understand why softness is not an accident. It is engineered. Look at your environment. Food, entertainment, stimulation, praise, distraction. It is all instant. You can order pleasure to your door with a swipe. You can escape discomfort with a scroll. You live in a world that has removed friction from almost every surface. That did not happen out of love for your soul. It happened because soft, distracted, emotionally reactive men are easy to tax, easy to sell to, easy to control. A tough man with inner sovereignty is hard to herd. Most people today are what Machiavelli would call unarmed prophets. They have ideals, dreams, affirmations, but no steel behind them. In his words, all armed prophets have conquered, and the unarmed have been destroyed. In modern terms, your mental toughness is your weapon. Without it, your ideas are just noise inside your own skull. With it, your ideas become commands you can execute in the real world, even when you are tired, stressed, doubted, or afraid. So ask yourself a brutal question. Who benefits from your softness? When you hit snooze, someone else gets your market share. When you avoid difficult conversations, someone else controls the narrative. When you emotionally react instead of staying composed, someone else gains leverage. The comfort you protect is costing you invisible taxes every day, not just in money, in status, options, respect, attraction, and self-trust. Here is where the political lens becomes crucial. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls with state, sleep, weather, comments, and random dopamine spikes. Politics is structural. A prince does not move armies because he feels like it. He moves armies because his borders are threatened, because his enemies are advancing, because his allies are watching. He suffers travel, risk, and exhaustion because the alternative is losing the state. That is how your life must be framed if you want unshakable toughness. You suffer not to impress anyone, but because weakness has become politically unacceptable. Mental toughness, in the Machiavellian sense, is not about becoming a robot. It is about becoming mission-bound. Emotional reactivity is what happens when life hits you, and you have no clear political program of what you are building and what you refuse to lose. You snap, you collapse, you procrastinate because you have not defined your mission as non-negotiable. When the mission is vague, comfort wins. When the mission is defined as survival and expansion, comfort becomes irrelevant. Machiavelli observed that the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. That is mental toughness in one sentence. The fool eventually does the workout, eventually sets the boundary, eventually starts the business, eventually leaves the toxic situation. After years of hesitation and emotional chaos, the wise man does it while it still hurts, while it is still scary, because he understands delay is just a different form of surrender. Every time you delay, you pay interest on your future peace. Let me show you why this matters psychologically. Your brain is always learning, always forming associations. Every time you back out of discomfort, your nervous system learns one thing: pain is a command to retreat. Every time you step into discomfort on purpose, your nervous system learns something else. Pain is a signal that I am entering the domain where power is built. Over time, the same sensation that made you panic becomes the bell that tells you you are in the right place. This is what I mean by a political reason to suffer. You are rewiring your brain to see discomfort as proof of alignment with your mission, not as a sign that something is wrong. Now, this is crucial. You cannot build that wiring with random acts of willpower. You need a program, a structure, a doctrine. Machiavelli did not write motivational posters for princes. He gave them frameworks, pillars, methods. That is how you must treat your own toughness, not as a mood, but as a system of inner sovereignty with clear architecture. So here is the foundation this whole program will stand on. Your life is a state. You are its prince. Your emotions are your citizens. Your habits are your laws. Your environment is your geography. Your relationships are your alliances. Your vices are your enemies. You are already running a political system inside yourself, whether you admit it or not. The question is whether it is a weak, corrupt, easily invaded one, or a disciplined, fortified, strategically expanding one. In the rest of this journey, we are going to build what I will call the 5 pillars of inner sovereignty. These are not cute concepts. They are the core structures that determine whether you can stay cold, composed, and mission-bound under pressure. They will govern how you respond to stress, how you handle social pressure, how you walk into conflict, how you use pain, and how you move through a 30-day immersion that would turn most men into dust and turn you into someone unrecognizable to your former self. Before we break them down, I want you to see the path ahead. First, you will understand the internal politics of your mind so clearly that you can see who has been ruling you without your consent. Then you will install those 5 pillars, one by one, so your identity stops shifting with every emotion. After that, we will step into stress inoculation drills, training your system to treat pressure like training weight, not a threat. From there, we will go into social pressure resistance, so your composure does not crumble when eyes are on you. Finally, we will design a 30-day toughness immersion that Machiavelli himself would approve of. A structured campaign to destroy the softness that has been costing you years. Machiavelli said, "Fortune is a woman, and if you want to control her, it is necessary to treat her roughly." Modern people get offended by that metaphor and miss the point. Life does not hand permanent power to the timid. It rewards the man who is willing to confront chaos, endure controlled suffering, and impose his will on his own weakness first. Your mental toughness is how you negotiate with fortune. If you show up soft, you are tossed around. If you show up sovereign, you shape the odds in your favor. You are not here to become a little more motivated. You are here to change the regime inside your own head, to overthrow the comfort-led government and install a mission-led one, to stop negotiating with your weakness like it deserves a seat at the table. And everything that comes next, every pillar, every drill, every immersion, will be designed with one purpose: to make your suffering strategic, not random, so that every ounce of pain you accept pays out in power. In the next part, we will begin that reconstruction from the ground up, starting with the first pillar of inner sovereignty, the one shift that turns your life from a series of emotional reactions into a cold, focused campaign. In the old world, Machiavelli wrote for, a prince could not afford emotional chaos. He could not wake up and wonder who he was today. He could not let his moods rewrite his priorities. If he did, his enemies would not need to attack his walls. They would simply wait for his inner collapse. Your life is no different. If you want mental toughness that does not evaporate under stress, you need inner sovereignty built on pillars, not vibes. Number 1, a ruthless personal constitution. Every serious state has a constitution, written or unwritten. It is the document that says, this is what we tolerate. This is what we never allow. This is how we act when threatened. Most men today have no constitution. They have preferences. I prefer to wake up early. I prefer to eat clean. I prefer to work on my business. That is not sovereignty. That is a wish list. A constitution is different. It is a small set of non-negotiable rules you will enforce on yourself, even when you are tired, bored, angry, or afraid, because they are tied to your survival and expansion. Psychologically, this is identity-level toughness. When you act from preferences, every challenge becomes a negotiation. Do I feel like going to the gym? Do I feel like having this hard conversation? Do I feel like focusing tonight? Feelings sit at the table and vote. When you act from a constitution, there is no vote. The law is already written. The question is only, will I be a lawful ruler of myself or a corrupt one? That internal frame alone changes your behavior more than any motivational speech. Machiavelli wrote that good laws and good arms are the foundations of any strong principality. Your arms are your skills, your resources, your toughness. Your laws are your personal code. You can spend years trying to sharpen your skills and still stay weak because your laws are vague. A man who sees himself as someone trying to be consistent will always lose to a man who sees himself as the kind of man who does not break his word to himself. One breaks under pressure because the language is soft. The other becomes harder precisely under pressure because breaking the Constitution is a political crime in his inner state. How do you implement this without turning into some rigid caricature? You choose very few laws and you make them heavy. For example, you might write, in my state, training my body is mandatory daily service, not a hobby. Or, in my state, avoidance of necessary conflict is punished. Or, in my state, I do not lie to myself about effort. These are not posted on social media. They are written privately and reviewed often until your nervous system knows this is how we govern here. Over time, your brain stops debating basic actions and saves that energy for real strategy. Number 2, one dominant mission. A prince at war cannot fight every battle at once. If he tries, he loses the war. You are drowning in modern life partly because you are fighting 10 symbolic wars at the same time. You want to get shredded, become rich, fix your relationships, upgrade your style, learn new skills, heal old wounds all at once, while your attention is being bombarded every minute. No wonder your toughness feels thin. Your will is scattered across a dozen fronts. Inner sovereignty requires a primary campaign. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. He wrote that a ruler must have no other object, nor any other thought, nor take anything for his art, but war and its rules and discipline. In context, war meant the central craft that preserves the state. For you, that war is your dominant mission. Maybe it is building a business that buys back your time. Maybe it is transforming your body into something you respect. Maybe it is freeing yourself from a job that is slowly killing you. Whatever it is, you must elevate it above everything else, not in theory, but in daily decisions. Here is the psychology. The brain handles pain better when it is attached to a single clear purpose. When you do something hard and you do not know why, your system rebels. When you do something hard and you can immediately say, this is for the campaign, your system tolerates far more discomfort. A soldier on march does not enjoy every step, but he understands why it matters, and that meaning carries him. Most men today are suffering without a story. They grind in random directions, and their mind concludes correctly that this is insanity. So your second pillar is the discipline of saying no, not only to people but to side quests. You ask before you commit energy. Does this advance the dominant mission of my state in the next 3 years? If the answer is no, it is either ruthlessly minimized or abandoned. That might mean fewer social events. It might mean a simpler life. It might mean being misunderstood. This is where mental toughness becomes political again. You are choosing to redirect resources from entertainment to expansion, from image to infrastructure. Machiavelli also warned that men judge more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see you, to few to come in touch with you. In the age of social media, that line is lethal. Most men are building for the eye. They want to look busy, look successful, look tough. Inner sovereignty cares about the hand, about what you can actually do when no one is watching. Having one dominant mission forces you to shift from image to substance. You suffer for outcomes, not for applause. Number 3, emotional hierarchy, not emotional democracy. In a weak internal state, every emotion has equal voting rights. Anxiety speaks and you obey. Laziness speaks and you obey. Anger speaks and you obey. Then later, regret speaks and you obey that too by overcorrecting, apologizing, self-loathing. It is a chaotic parliament inside your head. No wonder you feel drained. Sovereignty means your emotions are advisors, not rulers. They present data. They do not pass laws. From a psychological standpoint, this is about metacognition, the ability to step outside your current state and observe it as information, not identity. When you feel fear before a difficult phone call, the democratic mind says, I am afraid, so I avoid. The sovereign mind says, fear is telling me there is risk and social stakes. Noted, the Constitution still requires me to act. When you feel anger in an argument, the democratic mind explodes and makes the moment about winning. The sovereign mind notes the surge, recognizes a boundary is being tested, and chooses a response that serves the long-term mission, not the short-term ego. Machiavelli understood this cold emotional hierarchy. He advised rulers that it is often safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, not because he hated warmth, but because he knew sentiment could not be allowed to override security. Translate that inside yourself. It is safer for your emotions to fear your constitution than to be coddled by your comfort. It is safer for your laziness to know that when the alarm rings, the prince is not negotiating. It is safer for your reactivity to know that, in conflict, composure has higher rank. Practically, you build this pillar by training a simple habit, naming your state without obeying it. I notice I am tired. I notice I am anxious. I notice I am bored. That one sentence puts you in the observer seat. From there, you ask a single question. What action serves my constitution and my mission right now? You will be shocked at how often the answer is clear once you stop trying to feel different before you act. Toughness grows every time you prove to yourself that feeling is not destiny. These 3 pillars already begin to change the internal landscape. A ruthless constitution removes endless decision fatigue. When dominant mission concentrates your suffering into a meaningful direction. Emotional hierarchy stops your moods from staging coups. Put together, they form the first half of a real internal regime change. You start to sense that the man you have been is not the man you are required to remain. But here is where it gets deeper. A prince does not rule only by personal strength. He shapes the terrain. He chooses allies. He builds walls. He controls gates. The next pillars of inner sovereignty move from inside your head to the world around you. They determine what gets access to your mind, how your environment either softens or hardens you, and which version of you are loyal to when it really hurts. In the next part, we will move into those outer structures of power, the 4th and 5th pillars, and you will see why most men lose their toughness, not in moments of crisis, but in the thousands of small inputs they naively allow into their kingdom every single day. You can already feel the difference when you imagine yourself as a ruler instead of a drifting civilian. A ruthless constitution replaces vague intentions. When dominant mission concentrates your firepower, emotional hierarchy stops your moods from overthrowing your plans every time life applies pressure. But even the strongest prince is vulnerable if his walls are thin and his gates are open. This is where most modern men lose their mental toughness, not in dramatic battles, but in quiet, constant environmental erosion. Number 4, a militarized environment. Machiavelli constantly stressed that a prince must know his terrain. He must understand the rivers, the hills, the fortresses, the roads. Why? Because whoever controls the terrain controls the battle. Your environment is your terrain. Your apartment, your phone, your desk, your car, your social circle, your digital diet. These are the hills and valleys where your habits fight for survival. If your environment is built for comfort, you will spend your life fighting uphill against your own surroundings. Psychologically, environment is stronger than willpower over the long term. Willpower is a burst. Environment is gravity. You can override gravity for a moment, but if you keep jumping off the same ledge, you will always fall the same way. If your bed is your main command center, if junk food is within arm's reach, if your phone is a casino of distraction one swipe away, you are not weak for losing. You are outnumbered. Toughness collapses not because you lack character, but because your state is militarily exposed. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who is not himself wise cannot be wisely advised. Translate that to your surroundings. If your environment is not wise, your emotions cannot be wisely guided. You can pep talk yourself all you want, but if the first thing you see in the morning is a glowing screen full of noise, your nervous system starts the day reactive, scattered, and weak. If the first thing your eyes land on is a written constitution, a clear mission statement, and tools laid out for training, your nervous system starts the day oriented towards sovereignty. So what does a militarized environment look like in practice? Think of it as designing your home and digital world, like a fortress that favors your stronger self and starves your weaker one. For example, if your mission requires physical strength, your living space needs to make training the default. The floor is clear. The gear is visible. The schedule is posted at eye level. There is a defined training corner that tells your brain, here, we do hard things. On the other hand, the soft temptations are buried, delayed, made inconvenient. Comfort is permitted, but it has to go through checkpoints. This applies digitally as much as physically. Your phone can be an invading army or a loyal ally. In a militarized environment, the first screen is clean and minimalist. Only the tools that help your mission live there. Everything else is banished to distant folders or removed entirely. Notifications are not allowed to storm your attention whenever they please. You set specific windows where the gates open and you deal with the outside world. The rest of the time, the city is focused on work, training, and recovery. Machiavelli often praised rulers who fortified their cities and governed their subjects in such a manner that they could be attacked with difficulty. You must become difficult to attack by distraction, by laziness, by chaos. That does not mean becoming a hermit. It means becoming intentional. You choose where you sit to work. You choose what you see when you walk into your kitchen. You choose whether your bedroom looks like a teenager's cave or a warrior's barracks. You choose whether your evenings are swallowed by random entertainment or curated like a training ground for your mind. Number 5, dynastic loyalty to your future self. Every serious ruler thinks in dynasties. He is not just ruling for this year. He's thinking about 10, 20, 50 years ahead. He plants trees he will never sit under. He makes sacrifices that will mainly benefit those who come after him. You need that same mentality toward your future self. Right now, you are the founding ruler of your own line. The man you will be in 10 years is not a stranger. He is your heir. Your toughness now decides whether he inherits a thriving state or a burned-out ruin. Most men betray their future self daily. They leave him the bill. They eat in ways that guarantee him pain. They spend in ways that guarantee him stress. They avoid decisions that guarantee him regret. Why? Because they think of the future self as a different person. The brain literally discounts his pain. This is why short-term comfort wins. Your system feels your current discomfort more than it imagines that man's suffering. Inner sovereignty requires reversing that loyalty. You begin to treat your future self as the true prince, and your current self as the temporary steward whose job is to protect him. Machiavelli noted that the great majority of mankind are satisfied with appearances, as though they were realities. Your weaker self lives on appearances. He wants to feel like a king now, even if it leaves the real king in chains later. He will buy the status object, skip the workout, avoid the confrontation, delay the project, all for the illusion of peace. Your stronger self, the one you are building, is willing to look less impressive today in order to be unshakable tomorrow. Dynastic loyalty means you repeatedly choose actions that make your future self dangerous, even when they make your present self uncomfortable. This is not vague inspiration. It is a practical psychological tool. When you face a hard choice, you stop asking, "What do I want right now?" and start asking, "What does my future self desperately need me to do today?" That simple reframe changes the emotional weight. It turns a workout from a chore into a duty. It turns saving and investing from deprivation into protection of the dynasty. It turns studying after work from an annoyance into a direct transfer of power to the man who will carry your name. Forward, Machiavelli also pointed out that whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Dynastic thinking incorporates that. You know that the world will shift. Economies change, industries die, bodies age. So you train your future self not just to have more things, but to be more adaptive, more skilled, more composed. You invest in his ability to navigate storms with cold clarity. That means deliberately choosing challenges now that stretch you, rather than hiding from them and hoping luck will carry your air. When you combine these two pillars with the first three, you get a very different internal state. A ruthless constitution sets the law. A dominant mission provides the campaign. Emotional hierarchy keeps the court in order. A militarized environment fortifies the walls and sculpts the terrain. Dynastic loyalty gives your suffering a lineage. Suddenly, toughness is not a random trait you hope to possess. It is the natural byproduct of the regime you have built. At this point, you might already notice subtle shifts. You feel a little more insulted by your own excuses. You feel a little less tolerant of distraction. You feel a little more protective of that future man carrying your name. Good. That is the beginning of sovereignty. But do not make the mistake many men make here. They stop at philosophy. They binge ideas about toughness and never step into controlled difficulty. A prince does not just read about war. He trains in armor, marches with his men, studies every possible assault. The next phase of this program is where theory meets pressure. You have the political framework. Now we start inoculating your system against stress, not by waiting for life to hit you, but by designing deliberate drills that teach your nervous system a new story. Pressure is where you become most composed, not where you collapse. This is where your mental toughness shifts from an idea to a reflex. In the next part, we will dive into stress inoculation, the art of exposing yourself to controlled discomfort so that chaos in the real world feels almost familiar. You will see how to build simple, brutal practices that turn your daily life into training ground, until the situations that once made you reactive become the very arenas where you feel most at home. You can write all the constitutions you want, choose a mission, and design a fortress of an environment. But until your nervous system has felt pressure and learned to stay composed, your toughness is theoretical. This is where most men fail. They study stoicism, quote, discipline, love the idea of resilience, but when stress arrives unannounced, their system panics. Machiavelli would never trust a prince who had only known peace. He would want to know, how do you behave when the room is on fire? Stress inoculation is exactly what it sounds like. You deliberately expose yourself to controlled doses of discomfort so your system builds immunity. Just as a vaccine trains the body to recognize a threat and respond calmly, these drills train your mind to recognize pressure and remain mission-bound instead of emotionally reactive. This is the bridge between I know what I should do and I do what I must do even when my heart is pounding. Most people wait for life to ambush them. They coast in comfort and treat stress as an emergency. When it hits, they are shocked, overwhelmed, and they interpret their reaction as proof that they are weak. The powerful reverse this. They treat stress as a training partner. They walk toward it in controlled ways so that when the unpredictable hits, their nervous system has already seen something similar. It is no longer an alien force. It is familiar terrain. Number 1. The daily hardship window. This is a non-negotiable block of time where you expose yourself to something you genuinely do not want to do every single day by design. It could be physical, like a brutal conditioning session, heavy lifting, or a long, fast walk when you are tired. It could be mental, like deep work, without distractions on a task you have been avoiding. It could be emotional, like initiating a difficult conversation you have been postponing. The content matters less than the message you send to yourself. Once per day, we suffer on purpose. Psychologically, this is where your brain learns a new story about pain. Right now, most men associate discomfort with danger and retreat. When you choose discomfort daily, your system starts to understand that pain can appear in safe contexts under your command. You are not being punished. You are training. Machiavelli observed that war is not to be avoided, but only put off to the advantage of others. Translate that internally. You cannot avoid hardship. If you postpone it, you simply grant the advantage to your enemies. Future regret, lost opportunity, weaker self. The hardship window is you declaring that if suffering must exist, it will be collected under your supervision and converted into power. Number 2. Controlled exposure to micro-chaos. Life rarely attacks you under perfect conditions. It comes when you are tired, late, annoyed, or distracted. If you only train when the circumstances are ideal, you are rehearsing a fantasy. To inoculate against real stress, you occasionally practice in slightly messy conditions. You work when there is some noise instead of waiting for total silence. You hit the gym even when it is crowded, and you feel self-conscious. You practice your pitch after a long day instead of waiting for the perfect morning. You are teaching your system that the presence of chaos does not cancel the mission. From a neurological standpoint, this is powerful. Your brain loves patterns. If you only execute when you feel perfect, it learns execution requires perfection. Any deviation then becomes an excuse to freeze. When you deliberately act in slightly suboptimal contexts, your brain learns a different association. Execution is possible even when conditions are imperfect. That shift alone can double your toughness. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is the arbiter of half the things we do, leaving the other half or so to be controlled by ourselves. Micro-chaos training is you taking control of your half. Regardless of how fortune arranges the circumstances, you will notice something strange once you begin. The very moments you used to interpret as reasons to quit become signals that training has started. The traffic, the delay, the fatigue, the crowded room, these no longer mean today is ruined. They mean today's drill just intensified. That mindset is rare. It is also addictive. You start to feel a quiet pride in doing solid work on days when old you would have surrendered by noon. Now this is where I want to interrupt your pattern for a moment. You have been listening, nodding, maybe even seeing yourself in these descriptions. Good. But this cannot stay abstract. Now before we go deeper, I want you to lock this into your mind and drop it in the comments. I choose disciplined suffering over comfortable weakness. That sentence is not a slogan. It is a line in your constitution. Every time you repeat it, you are reminding your nervous system that pain is not your enemy. Undirected pain is disciplined suffering is the tax you pay to become the kind of man who cannot be bought with comfort. Number 3, high-pressure rehearsal. There are certain situations in your life that consistently make you reactive. Maybe it is confrontation with authority. Maybe it is asking for what you are worth. Maybe it is saying no when someone pushes your boundaries. Maybe it is performing or speaking in front of others. Most men simply hope these moments go better next time. You will not hope. You will rehearse under pressure. This means you intentionally recreate a milder version of the situation and practice your response. You stand in your living room and rehearse the words you will say when you ask for the raise, aloud, until your tongue stops tripping. You role-play the difficult conversation with a friend you trust. You record yourself speaking and watch it back, not to judge your looks, but to study your composure. If you want to go further, you elevate your heart rate first with push-ups or fast pacing, then practice, so your body learns to speak calmly while your physiology is activated. Machiavelli admired rulers who prepared in peace for what would come in war. He wrote of one that, in times of peace, he never thought of anything but war. Your high-pressure rehearsal is that mentality adapted to modern life. You do not wait for the big moment and hope adrenaline will turn you into a different man. You become that man in private, so when the moment comes, your system recognizes the script. Stress becomes fuel for a performance you have already rehearsed, not a trigger for collapse. Number 4. Post-stress coding. Most people treat stress like a storm they are trying to survive. It hits, they endure whatever they can, then they move on and try not to think about it. The problem is that their nervous system still encodes the event as pure threat. Toughness grows when you review stress afterward, like a commander debriefing a battle. Not to shame yourself, but to learn. What did I feel? How did I react? Where did I hold the line? Where did I fold? What will I do differently next time? This process transforms random suffering into structured data. If you lost your temper in a conversation, you do not just think, I am terrible. You identify the trigger, the exact moment you lost emotional hierarchy, and you decide in advance how the sovereign version of you will respond when that trigger appears again. If you froze in a meeting, you do not just label yourself shy. You recognize that your system misread attention as danger, and you design a small exposure to that feeling. Stress becomes a teacher, not a judge. This is the difference between a man who is traumatized by difficulty and a man who is trained by it. Both faced pain, both felt fear. One left it unprocessed, and his nervous system learned, never again. The other processed it consciously, extracted the lesson, and his nervous system learned, next time, we will be sharper. Machiavelli noted that a man who is used to adversity will stand firmer in prosperity. Post-stress coding is how you become that man. You normalize adversity by integrating it instead of running from it. All of these drills have one thing in common. They remove the surprise factor. Weak men are constantly shocked by life. Every bill, every setback, every conflict feels like an injustice. Strong men are rarely surprised. They may not know the exact form of the next challenge, but they recognize the flavor. Their body has already done hard things on purpose. Their mind has already walked toward discomfort. Their state has already written laws that apply even when it hurts. Imagine yourself 6 months into this kind of training. Every day, you have paid your hardship window. A few times a week, you have acted in less than ideal conditions. You have rehearsed your weak spots instead of avoiding them. After stressful events, you have debriefed instead of numbing out. Do you really think you will respond to stress the same way? Or will you start to feel a strange calm in situations that used to dominate you? This is the beginning of cold, mission-bound composure. But stress does not only come from circumstances. Some of the heaviest pressure you will ever feel comes from people. From eyes on you, from judgment, rejection, or ridicule. From the fear of being cast out from the tribe. Machiavelli understood social perception deeply. Everyone sees what you appear to be, he wrote. Few experience what you really are. If you are not careful, social pressure will make you betray who you are to protect what you appear to be. In the next part, we will turn your attention to that arena, social pressure resistance. You will learn how to hold your frame when others want you to fold, how to stay internally sovereign when the crowd moves one way and your mission demands another, and how to convert social tension from a threat into yet another form of stress you are quietly trained to handle. Some of the heaviest weight you will ever feel is not a barbell or a bill. It is the silent weight of other people's eyes, the fear of being judged, the fear of being rejected, the fear of standing alone. You can be disciplined in private, ruthless with your schedule, solid under physical stress, and still collapse the moment someone raises an eyebrow at your choices. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Power is never built in a vacuum. It is always built inside a network of opinions, loyalties, and perceptions. If you cannot stay sovereign under social pressure, your mental toughness has a soft underbelly. Social pressure turns many men into emotional puppets. They agree when they want to disagree. They laugh when they want to be silent. They say yes when their constitution clearly says no. In the moment, it feels harmless. Just go along. Do not make it awkward. Do not be that guy. But every time you violate your own code to keep the peace, you send a message to your nervous system. The crowd is king here, not the prince. Over time, your body learns that acceptance is safer than authenticity, and your toughness rots from the inside. Machiavelli wrote that men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. In modern terms, most people will only ever know the surface of you. The problem is that you live with the reality of you. If you keep sacrificing reality for appearance, you win the cheap approval of the many and lose the deep respect of the one man whose opinion actually matters. The one you are alone with at night. Number 1, the courage to be unpopular. This is the first pillar of social pressure resistance. It is the willingness to lose comfort in the group in order to maintain loyalty to your constitution. When a conversation goes against your values, you do not have to start a war, but you also do not join the chorus. When someone pressures you to break your rules, you do not write a story about how it is not a big deal this one time. You recognize the political truth. Once the state allows law breaking for convenience, it loses legitimacy. The same is true inside you. Psychologically, the fear here is ancient. Your nervous system still thinks exile from the tribe equals death. That is why even small disapproval can trigger disproportionate anxiety. Modern life, however, gives you a strange advantage. You can afford micro-exiles. You can afford to say no in a room and still have a life. You can afford to be misunderstood by a handful of people and still move on. The stakes your nervous system is reacting to are rarely as high as they feel. The courage to be unpopular is largely the courage to disappoint imaginary catastrophes. Machiavelli famously said, "It is safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." People distort this into cartoon cruelty. The deeper reading is simple. It is safer to be respected than to be liked. Translate that socially. If you make your primary goal being liked, you will fold every time the group's desires clash with your mission. If you make your primary goal being self-respecting and clear, some will like you, some will not. But you will walk away from every interaction with your crown intact. That inner respect is a form of quiet fear. Your weaker impulses learn to tread carefully around a man who does not betray himself to please others. Number 2, frame anchoring. Every social situation has a frame, an invisible story about what is happening and who holds power. In a weak state, you unconsciously accept whatever frame is presented. If others treat your goals as ridiculous, you shrink. If they make your discipline seem extreme, you soften your language. If they act like your standards are negotiable, you start negotiating. Frame anchoring is the habit of carrying your own story into every interaction and refusing to abandon it just because someone else offers a louder one. From a psychological perspective, this is about preloading. Before you walk into a room, a call, a conversation, you ask, "What is my frame here?" Maybe it is, "I am a man building a sovereign life." not a boy looking for validation. Maybe it is. My time is a resource of my state, not a toy for others to play with. Maybe it is. I will remain calm and clear, even if others escalate. You do not argue this frame with others. You simply act from it consistently. Over time, people sense it. They may push against it, but if you do not flinch, they adapt, or they drift away. Machiavelli advised princes to appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, upright, while being ready to act contrary when necessity required. This is frame mastery. Outwardly, you can be pleasant, kind, easy to talk to. Internally, you are anchored. You know your mission and your lines. You do not need to broadcast your toughness. You simply do not abandon your post. When someone tries to drag you into drama, you stay in the frame of strategy. When someone tries to turn a disagreement into a popularity contest, you stay in the frame of truth. Toughness here is not loud. It is the quiet refusal to let your mind be hijacked by other people's stories. Number 3, strategic distance and social fasting. Not every environment deserves your constant presence. Some rooms weaken you every time you enter them. Certain friend groups, workplaces, or digital spaces are like slow acid baths for your resolve. You leave feeling drained, doubtful, small, yet you keep going back because they are familiar. Inner sovereignty demands that you occasionally step away, not as an emotional outburst, but as strategic distance. Machiavelli warned that he who builds on the people builds on mud. If your main source of strength is group approval, your foundation is unstable. Social fasting is the deliberate practice of spending chunks of time away from the noise, so your nervous system recalibrates to your own voice. This might mean weekends with fewer social obligations and more solitary work or training. It might mean specific periods where you pull back from online chatter. It might mean saying no to certain invitations that you know will leave you feeling weaker. The goal is not permanent isolation. The goal is to remind your system that you do not need constant social input to exist. Psychologically, when you reduce noise, you start to hear your own mission again. Your constitution gets louder. Your values become clearer. You realize how many of your old choices were made just to avoid temporary awkwardness. That realization is uncomfortable at first. It feels like losing something. In reality, you are regaining something. The ability to act without the crowd's breath on your neck. Then when you return to social life, you do so as a man who has his own center, not as a satellite orbiting everyone else. Number 4, calm defiance in live pressure. Think about situations where you usually fold. Maybe someone tries to push past your boundaries. Maybe a group mocks a decision you made. Maybe a family member uses guilt to control you. The old you would react emotionally. Anger, sarcasm, retreat, over-explaining. Social pressure resistance means you respond with calm defiance. You keep your tone low and steady. You keep your words short and clear. You do not justify your entire philosophy. You simply state your line and hold it. For example, when someone digs at your discipline, you do not launch into a sermon. You might say, "This works for me," and change the subject. When someone tries to guilt you for saying no, you do not argue about their feelings. You might say, "I understand you are disappointed. My answer is still no." Internally, your heart might be pounding. That is fine. Remember your stress inoculation. You have felt an elevated heart rate and acted anyway. This is just a social version of that drill. Machiavelli observed that a prince is also respected when he is either a true friend or a downright enemy. Applied to your life, that means ambiguity breeds disrespect. When you are sometimes firm and sometimes spineless, people subconsciously learn that your boundaries are negotiable. When your no can become a yes under enough pressure, you will always be pressured. Calm defiance closes that door. It signals that pushing harder will not produce a different answer. Most social manipulators are lazy. When they sense a firm wall, they look for easier targets. As you develop these habits, notice what changes. You begin to feel a new kind of toughness. Not just the ability to endure pain, but the ability to hold your ground in front of disapproval. You may lose some connections that were built on your weakness. You may be talked about. You may be called rigid, intense, distant, so be it. Machiavelli reminded his readers that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle, than to initiate a new order of things. You are initiating a new order inside your life. Expect resistance. The reward is that your mental toughness is no longer limited to empty rooms and quiet mornings. It follows you into meetings, dinners, negotiations, conflicts. You remain the same man in private and in public. You stop shape-shifting to match whoever is in front of you. That consistency is rare. People may not always like it, but they will learn to predict it. And prediction, strangely enough, often turns into respect. Now you have the pillars of sovereignty, the drills of stress inoculation, and the armor against social pressure. You have the political reason to suffer and the structure to direct that suffering. The final piece is to turn all of this into a concentrated campaign, a period of time where you push these principles from theory into lived reality so hard that your old self cannot survive it. In the next part, we will construct a 30-day toughness immersion that Machiavelli would recognize as a real campaign. Clear objectives, defined rules, escalating challenges, and victory conditions. This will not be a cute challenge for social media. It will be a private war you wage to install a new regime inside yourself, one that does not vanish when the month ends. Everything we have covered so far is a doctrine, a way of seeing yourself, your mind, and your life as a state that must be ruled. But doctrine alone does not crown you. Crowns are earned in campaigns. Machiavelli wrote for men who had to move armies, secure cities, and survive plots, not for men who only wanted to feel inspired. The next 30 days are your first real campaign. If you run them with seriousness, the man who began this will not be the man who finishes it. Think of these 30 days not as a lifestyle challenge, but as a state of emergency declared inside your life. For 1 month, normal rules are suspended. Comfort loses its veto power. Old identities do not get a vote. You are acting as a wartime prince, tightening control to crush a rebellion, the rebellion of your weaker habits. Number 1, the first 10 days, regime shock. The opening phase of any takeover is not subtle. It is decisive. In these first 10 days, your job is to send a clear, unmistakable signal to your nervous system that the old regime is over. You do that by enforcing your constitution daily, paying your hardship window without fail, and beginning a cleanse of your environment and social inputs. This is the period where you draw hard lines. Times you wake up, times you train, times you work, times you shut down distraction. You are not chasing perfection. You are enforcing non-negotiables. Psychologically, these days are about breaking inertia. Your system will resist. It will whisper every story it knows. You are too tired. This is too extreme. You can start tomorrow. This is where you begin to enjoy the friction. Every time that voice speaks and you act in alignment with your constitution anyway, you are not just being disciplined. You are staging a coup. Machiavelli wrote that one change always leaves a dovetail into which another will fit. In other words, once you begin to change, change becomes easier. Regime shock uses that momentum. The first victory might be small, but it creates the slot for the next one to lock into. During these 10 days, your hardship window becomes sacred. There is no negotiation about whether you do something hard. The only question is, which difficult thing best serves your mission that day? You are also beginning to militarize your environment in real time, clearing clutter, hiding temptations, setting up visible cues for who you are becoming. This is not about aesthetics. It is about symbolism. Every time you walk into a slightly harsher, cleaner, more intentional space, you feel the new order asserting itself. Number 2, the second 10 days, pressure escalation. Once the initial shock has been delivered and your system realizes you are not joking, you enter the phase where real toughness is forged. The second 10 days are about increasing the load. Your hardship window becomes more demanding. Your micro-chaos training becomes more deliberate. You begin high-pressure rehearsals for the social and emotional situations that normally unravel you. You are no longer just obeying your constitution, you are stress testing it. This is where fatigue will tempt you to back off. The novelty has worn off. The people around you have noticed something is different and may start to test your resolve. Invitations will appear at the exact times you had reserved for training. Work will get hectic. Your emotions will swing harder. All of this is predictable. In fact, it is desirable. Machiavelli observed that fortune shows her power where valor has not prepared to resist her. You are now doing the opposite. You are preparing, in the middle of fortune's small storms, to resist. Practically, you can choose a few targeted drills for this phase. Perhaps you decide these 10 days include the hardest physical sessions you have done in a long time. Perhaps you commit to having the difficult conversation you have delayed for months. Perhaps you speak up in the room where you usually shrink. Perhaps you deliberately work deeply when your energy is low, training your ability to access focus on command. The specifics are yours. The principle is simple. You seek controlled situations where the old you would have folded, and you walk right into them. You will fail at some of these. You will hesitate, soften, over-explain, or retreat in a moment you hope to conquer. That is part of the design. This is where post-stress coding becomes crucial. Instead of declaring yourself weak, you debrief like a commander. Where did I lose composure? What thought or fear took control? What would my sovereign self have done? Then you adjust and, if possible, re-enter a similar situation before these 10 days end. Machiavelli wrote that, where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. He did not mean difficulty disappears. He meant that obstacles shrink relative to a will that keeps returning to the field. Number 3, the final 10 days, identity consolidation. The last stretch of this campaign is not about seeing how much more you can suffer. It is about cementing a new identity. You have shocked the regime. You have escalated pressure. Now you must make this way of operating feel like home. These 10 days are about consistency under fatigue, clarity under noise, and a new baseline for who you are when you are not trying. Psychologically, identity consolidates when your brain sees a pattern it can no longer deny. It stops saying, I am trying to be disciplined, and starts saying, this is what we do. It stops saying, I'm experimenting with toughness, and starts saying, I am the man who does the hard thing. To accelerate that shift, you pay obsessive attention to your self-talk in these days. You stop narrating your efforts as exceptions. You stop telling people you are on a challenge. You speak about your habits as normal for you, not as temporary stunts. Machiavelli argued that it is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Applied here, the label mentally tough is meaningless if you chase it directly. It becomes real when your daily behavior honors it. In these final 10 days, honor is built quietly. You wake up when you said you would, not because you are trying to impress anyone, but because the prince keeps his own laws. You train when you said you would. You work when you said you would. You say no when your constitution demands it. You review your day at night and make small tactical adjustments. There is no drama, only governance. This is also the period where you refine your social pressure resistance. People will have noticed your patterns by now. Some will respect them. Some will poke at them. Some will try to pull you back into old dynamics. You practice calm defiance repeatedly. You hold your frame without aggression. You show in real time that this new regime is not a phase. It is the new normal. The messages you respond to, the invitations you accept, the conversations you entertain, all communicate this silently. By the end of 30 days, something fundamental has shifted. You have not become invincible, but you have proven a few critical truths to yourself. You can suffer on purpose. You can act under pressure. You can hold your ground socially. You can design your environment instead of being a victim of it. You can choose in favor of your future self, even when your present self is whining. That proof is more valuable than any external achievement because it becomes your private evidence file. The next time you face something hard, you are not borrowing confidence from fantasies. You are drawing from memory. Here is the deeper political insight Machiavelli would offer you. A regime is most vulnerable right after a successful revolution. The old order wants to return. People are uncertain. Structures are fresh. Your inner state is no different. After these 30 days, the temptation will be to relax back into softness, telling yourself you have earned it. That is exactly how old patterns regain power. The real purpose of this immersion is not to endure 30 days of extremity, then crash. It is to raise your permanent standard. Certain behaviors are simply not allowed in your state anymore. You are closing in on the real transformation. From a man who waits for motivation to a man who moves from mission. From emotional reactivity to cold, deliberate composure. From a subject in his own life to a prince who governs. All the pieces are on the board now. The philosophy, the pillars, the drills, the campaign. What remains is to weld them into a single, coherent identity that outlives the program itself. In the final part, we will pull everything together into one complete mental toughness framework Machiavelli would recognize. How you think, how you act, how you suffer, how you lead yourself over years, not just weeks. This is where the program stops being a chapter in your life and becomes the defining political order of your inner world. There is a moment in every real transformation where the question silently changes. Up to now, the question in your mind has been, can I really do this? Can I actually become this kind of man? But once you have seen yourself enforce a constitution, march through stress, hold your ground under social pressure, and move through a 30-day campaign without collapsing into the old patterns, that question becomes smaller. A new, more dangerous question appears. Now that I know I can, will I choose to stay this way? This is the moment Machiavelli wrote for. Not the moment of inspiration, but the moment after the first victories, when a prince has taken the city and must decide what kind of regime he will build. Many conquer, few govern well. Many men have short bursts of hardness. Few turn hardness into an enduring order. You have not gone through this program just to prove a point to yourself for a month. You have done it to change who holds power inside you for years. Number one, from experiments to law, up to now you have experimented. You tried on a ruthless personal constitution. You lived as if one dominant mission mattered more than your moods. You practiced emotional hierarchy. You hardened your environment. You acted with loyalty to your future self. You walked into stress on purpose, rehearsed high pressure, decoded your reactions. You stood firmer in social tension. All of that could, in theory, be filed under a phase, a strong season, a temporary campaign. Inner toughness only becomes permanent when you take the behaviors that worked and promote them from experiments to law. Machiavelli wrote that a prudent man must always follow in the footsteps of great men and imitate those who have been supreme. You have glimpsed your own great man inside this program. There were days when your actions were supreme compared to your old self. Times when you answered the alarm instead of the excuse. Moments when you spoke with calm defiance instead of fear. Even if they felt rare, they were real. Now the task is brutal and simple. You enshrine those behaviors as normal. They are no longer special events that prove you are capable. They are standard procedures of the regime. Psychologically, identity hardens around repetition and story. You repeat what you want to keep, and you tell the story that supports it. That means you stop saying, I am trying to be more disciplined, and you start saying, I am the man who pays his hardship tax every day. You stop saying, I am working on my boundaries, and you start saying, I am a man whose no means no. You are not lying to yourself. You are aligning your narrative with the evidence you have already created. Then your brain does what it always does. It works to keep your behavior consistent with your story. Number two, the lion and the fox inside your toughness. Machiavelli famously said a ruler must learn to be both lion and fox. A lion to scare the wolves, a fox to recognize the traps. If you misunderstand mental toughness, you might think it is only about being the lion, hard, loud, aggressive, unbending. That is not the program you have built. Real toughness, as you have seen, has a fox living underneath the armor. It is not just force. It is strategy. Your lion shows when you enforce your constitution without apology, when you say no to what weakens you, when you step into hardship deliberately, when you refuse to fold under stress. That is necessary. Without the lion, you never break out of softness. But your fox is what keeps you from becoming brittle and stupid. The fox shows when you adjust your tactics as life changes, when you refine your environment instead of relying only on willpower, when you disengage from fights that do not serve your mission, when you step back from toxic crowds not because you are afraid, but because you are not willing to build on mud. Psychologically, the lion in you loves intensity. He wants to suffer, to prove, to clash. The fox in you loves positioning. He wants to choose battles, preserve resources, and outlast rivals. Without the fox, the lion burns out. Without the lion, the fox becomes a coward. Mental toughness that Machiavelli would respect is the marriage of both. You can be ruthless with yourself, yet flexible with your method. You can be unyielding in principle, yet adaptive in practice. You can be cold under pressure, yet warm with those you choose to protect. Number 3, the politics of relapse. Every serious regime faces counterattacks. Inside you, relapse is not a moral failure. It is a political event. Old habits, old environments, old social patterns will try to reclaim territory. There will be days when you slip. You hit snooze. You avoid the hard thing. You react emotionally. You chase comfort. The average man uses those days as evidence that all his growth was fake. He dramatizes them into an identity. The sovereign man treats them like a small uprising. He moves quickly, not with self-hatred, but with decisive correction. Machiavelli warned that injuries must be inflicted all at once, so that being tasted less, they offend less. Apply this inwardly. When you see relapse, you do not drag it out for weeks of guilt. You inflict the necessary correction fast. You sit down that same day and debrief what happened. You reassert your constitution. You make a small, concrete act of hardness immediately, even if it is tiny. You do not wait for Monday. You do not wait for a new month. You stamp the rebellion quickly so it cannot grow. The message to your system is clear. Yes, we stumbled. No, the regime has not changed. There is also the social side of relapse politics. People around you may secretly prefer your softer version. You being stronger forces them to see their own softness. Your seriousness highlights their avoidance. Do not be surprised if subtle invitations to your old self continue appearing long after the campaign ends. Jokes, guilt, little nudges. Remember, most people are, as Machiavelli put it, satisfied with appearances. They will happily accept the surface version of you if it keeps the peace. Your task is to decline that path calmly and consistently, and to let your reality speak louder than any explanation. Number 4, from personal program to private statecraft. At the beginning, this was a mental toughness program, something you follow step by step. A set of pillars, drills, and a 30-day immersion. In the long term, that language is too small. What you are really building is a way of governing yourself for the rest of your life. You are writing foreign policy for how you deal with stress. You are defining economic policy for how you spend energy and time. You are shaping social policy for who is allowed influence in your mind. You are running a state. Psychologically, this reframes everything. You stop obsessing over streaks and start thinking in institutions. What are the permanent institutions of your inner state? Daily training of some kind. Some form of hardship window, regular debriefs after stress, periodic social fasting, an environment audit every few months. These are not fads. They are organs. They keep the body of your regime alive. You might change the exact forms as your life evolves, but the functions remain. Machiavelli said that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. If you want to estimate your own intelligence as a ruler of yourself, look at the structures you have around you. Do you have systems that catch you when motivation fades? Do you have routines that automatically put you in contact with difficulty? Do you have boundaries that keep noise from flooding your mind? If not, your regime is still based on hope. If yes, then your toughness is no longer just inside you. It is embedded in the way your life is built. Number 5, the Quiet Empire. The title of this entire journey has been about the ultimate mental toughness program Machiavelli would give modern men. But notice something. At no point did you need to shout about it. You did not need slogans on your walls or declarations on your feeds. The toughest men in any era are rarely the loudest. They are the ones who move with a strange calm. Chaos erupts, and they act while others panic. Opportunities appear, and they step while others hesitate. Insults come, and they do not flinch. Your transformation, if you truly embrace it, will be quiet. People around you will feel it more than they hear it. They will notice that you do not rush to explain yourself. They will see that you no longer take the bait of every argument. They will sense that you are less available for nonsense. They will not know about the Constitution, the hardship windows, the 30-day campaign. They will only see the surface, a man who is hard to intimidate, slow to react emotionally, and consistent in his actions. That is the point. You did not do all of this to perform toughness. You did it to take back your crown from your own weakness. You did it so that when life comes with its storms, you meet it with a state that is already mobilized, with laws already written, with walls already fortified. So where does this leave you right now, in this moment? It leaves you with a decision that no one can make for you. You can treat everything you have heard as interesting philosophy and go back to the old government inside your head, the one ruled by comfort, fear, and social pressure. Or you can quietly, without spectacle, declare that from this day forward, you are the prince of your own state, and you will govern it accordingly. Machiavelli wrote that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. You now know where the traps are: comfort, softness, scattered mission, emotional democracy, engineered distraction, social cowardice. You also know where the wolves are: real stress, real risk, real conflict, real responsibility. Your mental toughness will be built in the space between them, where you move with cunning and strike with courage. You do not lack motivation. You never did. What you lacked was a political reason to suffer. Now you have one. Your suffering buys you sovereignty. Your discipline funds your dynasty. Your composure under pressure protects your state. Every time you choose disciplined suffering over comfortable weakness, you are voting in favor of the man you are becoming and against the man who has cost you too much already. Carry this like a private oath. You will not let softness rule your kingdom again. You will feel fear and act anyway. You will feel doubt and move anyway. You will feel the pull of the crowd and stand anyway. You will fail and return anyway. That anyway is the steel in your spine. It is the quiet sentence that turns all of this from content into destiny. The program ends here. Your regime begins now.